Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of CN Analysis, we are going to be taking the latest S-rank stun agent Caesar Kaisa. Keep in mind that this is going to be a little bit of a difference compared to the earlier creator service program because there are some changes here and there, so without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Alright, so the summary for Caesar King, our first ever S-rank defense agent. She is very universal in terms of adaptability when it comes to what kind of team do you want to run her with. Almost similar to Qingyi because you can in fact run Qing with a lot of different team comps, and her overall support capabilities are also very nice, extending beyond the usual sustain as well as offering buffs and debuffs for pretty much any sort of team comps we want to run, right? Keep in mind that our break efficiency, which the daze efficiency, is also very decent compared to our traditional stun units, as well as the fact that our buffs do last for a very long time, right? That being said, there are some cons for Caesar, which is number one, our chain attack is going to take a little bit longer of a time compared to our other traditional stun units such as Qingyi or even Lycon and Koleda, as well as the fact that the full utility from Caesar is going to be really apparent if the enemies are hyper aggressive, almost like Jane Doe, where if the enemies hit Jane Doe a lot, you can dodge, and it's the exact same for Caesar. If we can keep blocking, utilizing our EX skill to perfect block the enemies, then you can see the value of Caesar a lot more, right? So that is going to be there for overall advantage and disadvantage. So overall, Caesar in this creator's opinion is going to be a tier 0 characters when it comes to our speed, when it comes to our quick parry, quick block, quick days, as well as the overall support utilities. So very nice. So some team comps, we can run her with Ellen, we can run with Nico Mata, we can run her with Zhu Yuan, even we can run her with Jane Doe. At the end of the day, it will definitely kind of play into the overall show file, which is going to be how you utilize Caesar in the respective team comps, as well as the Lian Du, which is how familiar you are with Caesar. She is not like I mentioned in my earlier creator experience server video, she really depends on how quickly you can respond to the enemy because she is like quote unquote a burst dazer. You want to use her for quick swap, to use her and break the enemy team, to parry with the perfect parry, or use the perfect block to distract, counter, and just interrupt the enemy attacks, and then you swap into your DPS. So it really depends if you're somebody that can utilize Caesar's kit to the highest extent. That is for the Jane Doe team comp, because both Jane Doe and Caesar, they are very reliant on a user's shogun and skills, right? But that being said, for a more easier composition, running them with Ellen as well as Nico Wata are gonna be better for beginners experience. For Zhu Yuan specifically, if you do not have Qingyi, you can consider pulling for Caesar and temporarily block out Zhu Yuan's utility with Qingyi. But keep in mind that Caesar at the end of the day is still gonna be like a burst quote-unquote dazer or support, unlike a Qingyi, which is really good as an on-field dazer, right? So in the future, if we get any other on-field dazers that can act like a similar role for Qingyi, then you're probably gonna be replacing Caesar. So all things considered, Caesar's entrance to any of our team comps, it offers very good amounts of support as well as utility and comfort, especially against our endgame content that has a lot more aggression, right? So if you do have the polychromes to spare, then you can consider pulling for Caesar just to kind of have a little bit of a comfort going to future content, especially if we get more and more difficult enemies. For our W engine summary, aside from our signature W engine, any of these W engines over here, they are also going to be an excellent alternative just for Caesar. And yes, you can in fact give them a stun W engine specifically just for the impact main stat. Even if you don't activate the secondary effect at all, having the stun, or rather the impact main stat, is going to be good enough for Caesar because she really doesn't really care about any of our defense W engines as of now, right? So giving her any of our stun W engines with impact is going to be an excellent alternative. If you don't really want to have this, then any of this over here can also work for Caesar. For our drive this is going to be as usual for our early access review, so I'm not going to be explaining too much. The 4-piece brand new as well as the 2-piece impact. For our slot 6 is going to be impact percentage, and our slot 4 and 5, depending on how much damage in the subsets you're going to be be getting for Caesar, right? Substats, crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, as well as pen ratio, just for the highest damage possible. And then finally, for our W engine versus our Mindscape, W engine technically is quote unquote cheaper, and the overall utility for W engine is going to be there. Not only does it improve our shield, but also increase our team-wide damage. So both in terms of offense and defense, W engine is going to be an excellent choice. But that being said, if you want absolute highest damage output, then Mindscape 1 is going to be more important than the W engine, because rest penetration is always going to be a diabolical debuff that we can use for pretty much any team. So if you only care about damage, then we do suggest getting the Mindscape 1. Jumping straight into our character development, you can honestly just see this from the game right now. Zenless Zone Zero itself, it already has a recommendation for players to kind of see which skills, which traces do you guys want to upgrade over here. Don't really have a lot of change. Core skill, into our parry, into our basic, into ultimate, which is the same as dodge. Between these skills, you're almost never going to be using Caesar's basic, ultimate, and dodge, unless in the future, if you guys have seen from dev notes, we are going to be getting a separate decimal system. So we'll kind of have to wait and see exactly how that works, right? For Caesar, her playstyle is essentially you use her only to swap in to either perfect parry, or when she's on the field, use her ESQ to do a perfect block. Other than that, she's pretty much not going to be on the field to do dodge or basic attack, unlike like Qingyi, for example. She's very much like Koleda. You play her to be using as a quick burst stunner or burst support, and then you swap back to your main DPS. Previously, the core talent, the attack percentage, it was fixed at 1000 regardless of any level, but unfortunately in the live version, this is going to be tied to your core level, so highly recommend to get this to the max for the 1000 attack buff. Very, very important. Now, ESQ and our parry is, like I mentioned, very, very good for our quick swapping. For our core talent, very quickly, 1400% of our shield plus 1400 raw point, lasting for 60 seconds, as well as raising our attack by 1000 flat. And this is going to be shared by our entire team as long as the shield persists. So whether you swap into Ellen or Sokaku or anyone, as long as the shield is there, this buffs, especially the attack buff, is going to be there for our entire team regardless of who you are going to be on the field, right? And then just refresh this with your perfect parry, perfect block, and the cycle kind of repeats itself all over again. Get this bar up, swap the DPS, and swap back in. This is going to be the additional ability, which is very, very easily triggered. As long as you have a defensive assist with the parry assist, which is pretty much almost every single unit in the game, you get this additional 25% damage increase lasting for 30 seconds within a 7-meter radius, right? So not too much to talk about. You're pretty much always going to be activating this. So yep, this is not vulnerability like I mentioned in my earlier access. This is damage percentage, right? So it is not that broken, but at the end of the day, it's still a very good amount of damage percentage buff for our team. Okay, so you can see over here, this is a chart that every single unit that have the parry assist, and then there are only 4 units in the entire game that has the dodge assist: Zhu Yuan, Grace, Rina, and Billy. Every other unit in Zenless Zone Zero, they are considered as a parry assist, so you can in fact use them with Caesar to basically activate the additional ability. So that's very, very nice. In summary, she provides a 30-second 25% damage buff and a 60-second 1000 attack buff as long as the shield is up, and all this is kind of tied to her EX skill to activate, right? So you can kind of take a pause over here to kind of see the rotations with the EX skill. Essentially, you don't really want to try to use her without the EX skill, and whenever you have the energy, getting the block, you will get the buffs. Pressing the EX skill when you have 40 energy places Caesar in this stance for roughly 2 to 3 seconds, and whenever any enemy attacks hit over here, she's going to be able to perform the perfect block. Whereas if you do not have energy, you are still going to be able to activate this stance. So the window for you to activate perfect block is honestly very, very generous, and it is quite easily activated. If you do get the block, then you get a parry. If you don't get the block, then you will not get a parry. You're just getting to the stuns, right? So that is essentially it. Also, we do get this 3 seconds worth of impact increase just to further illustrate that Caesar is meant to be a burst dazer, just to improve her impact for a short while, not lasting very long. So she is not really meant to be played as an on-field dazer or an on-field unit. So for Caesar specifically, if you were to not get hit and you press E, if you have more than 20 energy, you can still do the enhanced shield attack to kind of get the buffs you need without getting the perfect block. If you do get hit, then you are not required to go through this step and you still get the additional buff. So this graph, it might look extremely complicated, but me personally, I think this is just way too overblown, and essentially it comes down to this if you don't want to read all that. Getting the perfect block will give us a 3-second impact increase as well as a team-wide damage buff. That is essentially it if you perform a perfect block with Caesar. If you do not perform the perfect block, running her with the perfect parry, it will still allow us to perform some of a kit, right? So at the end of the day, burst days and call your day. And then if you were to kind of take a look over here, getting the perfect parry with Caesar, you can instantly press our attack to do a follow-up. And if we were to use our skill over here, it will still cast a very nice rotation to get the full benefit. Also, like I mentioned in the early access, if you press and hold your base attack long enough, it will shoot out this little spin that can do a little bit of a grouping within the enemy in the radius. So it's quite nice for any kind of mob scenario, right? That being said, it does consume 1 assist point, so do be wary of that. And yes, that also gives us the damage buff. If you did not understand any of the previous scenario because it's too complicated, no worries. So the only thing you need to memorize is as long as you have 40 energy, you can add the shield. If you press and hold your basic attack, you get a team-wide damage buff. And then if you were to do any of our perfect block into our skill, we can get our hyper increase enhanced heavy attack for our additional damage. And then at the end of the day, you really just have to get comfortable with Caesar because the way she plays is going to be quite unique compared to a lot of our different units in Zenless Zone Zero. So as long as you get familiar with her, you are going to be able to understand her. So you can kind of see as an example over here, if at the start of battle, we do have 40 energy, we can instantly just start into this. Even without getting hit, we can follow it up with a hit to get our shield over here. You can see this shield is there even without getting hit by any of the enemies, right? As long as you have the energy. So getting the shield is the number 1 priority. Into a grouping with our enhanced attack, swap into our support like Lucy, and then you do a quick assist into Soldier 11, and then that's basically going to be a rotation for this case, going to be a mono fire team, right? And then if you do get hit, swapping into Caesar for the perfect parry, and then you kind of just go onwards. You don't need to get hit to activate our buffs, right? As long as you have enough energy, a refreshing your shield is good enough, and then you can just instantly swap back into our supports. It is not required for our players to constantly use her only if the enemy is about to hit you. If you have enough energy, casting your skills will give you the shield and you can just swap back and continue rotations. So it is really not that bad even if the enemies don't hit you that frequently, right? So you can see rotation still feels extremely smooth while the enemy didn't even hit us a single time at all. Now when enemy is going to be shining yellow, getting a perfect block over here is going to be able to get a nice counter into a heavy, and then we do get a shield, and then you kind of just repeat the process all over again. And another rotation is going to be, for example, with Ellen over here. If the enemy is about to hit us, swapping to Caesar to perform the perfect parry into a basic attack to kind of glue them out a little bit, and then activating our EX skill to do the perfect block, get our buffs, and then we can just swap back into our supports over here. Or if the enemy is going to hit you again, then casting out EX skill if you have enough energy to perform another perfect block. Then at this point, swapping back to your DPS or your support can resume the rotation all over again, right? So this is going to be the summary for all of the buffs for Caesar: 1000 attack shield, 25% team-wide damage buff, as well as a 20% personal impact buff of 3 seconds. Okay, so now that we have this, how does Caesar compare to a lot of our other supports like Sokaku, Nicole, Rina, and Qingyi in terms of team-wide performance? So in terms of impact, or rather the stun efficiency for Caesar, with our W engine and drive this, she is not gonna be better than Qingyi. Qingyi does break faster as well as the stun damage multiplier for our entire team. And then if you talk about our burst dazing speed, it is also gonna be slower than Koleda because Koleda has the fastest daze multiplier in the entire game in the shortest span of time, right? That being said, it doesn't mean that she's weaker than these stun units because she herself, it is not a stun unit, right? Caesar is here for the defensive purpose beyond just stun because of the utility she provides. So for example, if we have an E0 S1 Julian as an example over here, then she can pretty much obtain all of our buffs for our entire team. And if we were to run a Jane Doe with a Seth, then you can see that at 400 anomaly proficiency, all these, you can see the buffs provided by the damage percentage can be seen over here. So Kaku with our Ice DPS, Nicole with our Ether DPS, Lycon with Ice DPS, blah, 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 blah. You can see that Caesar doesn't really fall too far off in terms of the overall support capabilities, this is gonna be a 54.08% damage increase with almost no restrictions whatsoever, right? This is gonna be A rank at M6, S rank at M0, no W engines, no special effects, and assume the enemy defense at 50 with no resistance, right? So you can see that Caesar's 1000 attack as well as 25% damage buff is gonna be placing her at pretty much rank 4 compared to all of our support capabilities in Zenless Zone Zero, which basically makes her very, very universal, and the only units that really outshine and outperform her are gonna be niche supports like Sokaku, Nicole, and Lycon, right? So very, very nice in terms of universal capability for a lot of our different team comps in Zenless Zone Zero. That being said, it also doesn't necessarily mean that these supports are better than Caesar as well, because for example, Nicole's defense down debuff, the coverage is not exactly long unless you really know how to utilize our chain attacks and letting go of our defense downs for the absolute highest coverage, right? Whereas for Caesar, you know that her buffs basically last for almost the entirety of the battle, so it will require for Nicole and Julian a better piloting skills to get the full buff coverage. And then another example is gonna be that Sokaku, even though she provides a shit ton of utility for our entire ice DPS, her rotations, her attack animations, they are gonna be very, very slow. So for players that are not used to this slower attack animations, I'm sure you guys have felt Sokaku's personal damage, her personal combat mechanic. You are probably gonna be getting hit, and if your Sokaku is very, very squishy, then she's not gonna be able to survive too long, especially against high aggression enemies, right? So both of them, they do offer a lot of supportive as well as damage capabilities, but it also comes with their own weakness. And then another problem that you want to compare her with Qingyi is that her highest burst damage capabilities can only be shown with a burst DPS such as Julian, which can deal a ridiculous amount of damage when the enemy is gonna be in the day state. So with a burst DPS like Julian, then Qingyi is gonna be very, very strong. But if we're gonna be using Qing with an on-field DPS, then Qingyi's performance is not gonna be that incredible, especially if you want to compare her with Caesar. And Caesar does have another thing that is not going to be mentioned so far, and that is going to be the anti-interrupt with the duration of the bars provided for both the attack as well as the damage percentage. So all this, it really makes Caesar like a very, very comfortable unit that can pretty much be utilized for almost any sort of team comps. Is it better than Sokaku? Is it better than Lycon? Maybe not in terms of raw damage, but when it comes to the overall piloting ability, when you actually use Caesar, then you will definitely feel the difference, especially with a DPS like Ellen who wants to complete her attack animations, right? Because the anti-interrupt allows Ellen to finish the entire animation chain without dodging or getting hit, and especially the final hit of Ellen is going to be very, very important for the highest damage output. Then when it comes to the defensive utility beyond our additional buffs, a 3600 shield is basically equivalent to 1/3 of our DPS health pool as of this current time of Zenless Zone Zero, and these are not going to be very obvious in terms of like how effective she is in terms of endgame content, because it is very hard to measure how valuable 1/3 of a shield is in a theory crafted scenario, because it really depends on the player's playstyle as well as the enemy mobs, right? But definitely offering quite a bit of comfort. Theoretical situations are not going to be the same as practical performance, so getting this shield may or may not be more useful for you as a player if you're better at dodging or better at parrying or not as good. Ellen team specifically, between these three units, if you have a Lycon or Qingyi, you can consider swapping out Sokaku and slapping on Kaisa with your Lycon and Ellen. The reason is because for Lycon, he is almost like an on-field dazer, whereas Caesar is gonna be like a speed dazer, and all these are gonna kind of add on together with Lycon's stun damage multiplier, ice rest penetration. It will work very well with Caesar's attack buff as well as damage buff. So Ellen in this specific junction will gain all of the buffs lumped into one, especially with the anti-interrupt. And one of the biggest problems that Sokaku has is the slower attack animations and raise the flag being ridiculously long and a very long hit drag, right? And Caesar basically fixes this problem for us. And the buff duration is definitely going to be longer than Sokaku as well, so also take that into consideration, which means that Ellen can stay on field longer and deal her damage and not worry about getting interrupted because of the anti-interrupt from her shield, right? So very, very synergistic with an Ellen team comp. If you want to talk about a Julian team comp, then Caesar is not going to be able to substitute anyone specifically, because Nicole, Qingyi and Zhuyuan, they are pretty much one of, if not the best Ether team comp as of this current moment. If you don't have Qingyi, then Caesar can be a replacement, but at the end of the day, Qingyi definitely performs much better than Caesar. If you change Nicole for Caesar, then the damage performance is not going to be too big of a difference. But theoretically, if you have a better piloting skill with Nicole, utilizing the defense down debuffs at the right times with the right days as well as the right ultimate skill from Zhuyuan, then theoretically Nicole does offer more damage for a Zhuyuan team, right? But if you just want general comfort as well as the utility of the anti-interrupt, the shield, the attack, then maybe Caesar will be better than Nicole for especially endgame content where the enemies do hit you for a lot. Then for our Jane Doe team, if you were to slot in Caesar, you can give a lot of the different teammates for our slot tree for a pure anomaly team comp of Piper, Grace, Seth. They are all not too bad. Between the units for Jane Doe specifically, you kind of wanna take away Grace because Grace takes up too much field time, and Jane Doe is someone that wants a lot of field time, and Caesar works here because she's like a burst dazer, right? So Grace is not gonna be as recommended. Piper kind of faced the same issue with Grace, which is she also wants a lot of field time with a spin. So amongst all these units, then Seth is gonna be the best pick for Seth, Jane Doe, as well as Caesar. Then in the future, when Bernice comes out, we are likely going to be replacing Seth for the Bernice, Caesar, Jane Doe. Pretty much might be the best in slot anomaly team comp, but we will have to wait for Bernice to come out, right? For now, Seth, like I mentioned in my early access review, he does have a problem where this animation is gonna be quite long. With the shield, it can be not very comfortable to fully finish Seth's enhanced attack animations, and whenever we get a parry from Caesar, we kind of reduce the impact for Seth's shield himself, right? So do take that into consideration. In the future, likely that we do get Bernice, then Seth is going to be going. Alright, and finally we can talk about a DPS that has been forgotten for a while, Nico Mata. Now Nico Mata with Caesar is honestly extremely synergistic, and she helps Nico Mata solve a very big problem, which is we don't really have a lot of team comps that work very well with Nico Mata as of this current moment. So currently Nico Mata, we can run her as like quote unquote like a hyper carry with Nicole and Caesar together. Within this case, we can also swap out Nicole for Lucy for the team-wide attack buff. This is a situation where previously one of the better Nico Mata team comp was Lucy, Piper, and Nico Mata. If we were to switch out Lucy, then Caesar can also work pretty well with Nico and Piper. Overall, the team comp for this is not going to be like tier 0 team comp. It's kind of like the mid-range team, but it definitely makes Nico Mata feel a lot smoother to play. As of other characters like Soldier 11, Anton, from our current testings, it is not going to be as good as compared to our team comps, right? The team-wide tier difference that Caesar offers compared to Qingyi is not going to be very obvious. So in most situations, if you are a Soldier 11 or Anton main, if you already have Qingyi, then Caesar's value is not going to be as high over here. And then for other breakers like Coletta Band are also very hard to tell the difference as a stun break. Specifically for the difference of Caesar as well as Qingyi, it also kind of depends on the main DPS, right? For Qingyi, it prefers for a burst DPS and on-field dazer like Qingyi. Then for Caesar, you prefer to have a on-field DPS and a burst dazer like Caesar, right? So it really depends on the overall playstyle. And then one team that for Soldier 11 is going to be Lucy, Soldier 11, and Caesar. So do go ahead and kind of experiment with yourself and try it out in battle. Brand new 4-piece for the shield are definitely best in slot. 2-piece impact, in my opinion, is better than the 2-piece energy regeneration because you just want to deal a little bit more impact since Caesar is going to be dealing a lot of impact damage from her kit as well. Overall, this is going to be very straightforward. Don't really have too much to explain over here, right? And then for our slots over here, slot 6, 100% impact. Then our slot 4 and 5 for highest damage is going to be crit rate with either attack percentage or physical damage boost. If you don't have this, if you want to like a more utility based, you don't really care about damage procedure that much, then HP or defense slot 4, HP or defense slot 5, they are going to be completely fine. If you only want your main DPS to be dealing damage and you want Caesar to be like beefier, right? And at the end of the day, it really depends on what do you want. Substats, double crit, attack pen, as usual, all going to be completely fine. If you don't care about damage, then substats are completely irrelevant as well because there are no such thing as impact substats. And then for our W engines, like I mentioned just now at the start of the video, W engine signature weapon is going to be the best. If you don't have this, then any of the impact main set W engines are going to be completely fine. And if you don't have that, then these substitutes from the spring as well as this craftable W engine for our defense is going to be also completely fine. But basically, Caesar does have a lot of different utilities that you can use as a substitute. Alright, finally for our Mindscape 1, this is gonna be a team-wide 15% rest penetration. First line, really not important because it's once every 5 minutes, right? So really not too crazy. The main thing is the 15% rest down. So depending on the enemy element, this is gonna be a team-wide 12.5 to 18.75% final damage increase. Even though rest pen is really good, because the value is only 15%, it might not be that crazy, so not that recommended for free to plays to really get this, right? Maybe if this was like Robin's Idolin 1 or Mindscape 1, that would be better, but 15% is just a little bit too low as of this current moment. Then for our Mindscape 2, 10% energy regeneration and 500 more attack from our 1000 baseline attack is going to be a roughly 13% final damage increase. Also not that impactful for our Mindscape, also not too recommended. Then Mindscape 3 and 5, nothing much to talk about over here. Overall 12% days multiplier increase. Then Mindscape 4 is really just for a comfort Mindscape. Additional 3 assist points as well as using our assist points to do a perfect block. So really just for players to get additional comfort in the overall kit. Keep in mind that most of the time if we are going to be using Caesar to get the buffs, not getting this 20 energy and 3 assist point is not going to be too important. Even if you don't have it, you're still going to be completely fine. So also a generally not too game-changing Mindscape 4. Then finally Mindscape 6 pretty much turns Caesar into a final main DPS because her damage increased by a whopping 50% personal damage with the 30% crit rate as well as 60% crit damage lasting 15 seconds. So this is kind of similar to Qing Yi's Mindscape 6. So their personal damage goes up by a lot, right? So both Qing Yi's M6 and Caesar's M6 drastically increase their personal damage. So overall, if you really care about the team-wide damage, because it is a 3-member team comp, whales can definitely consider this if we are going to be pulling for Caesar as a long-term investment. And with that, we have come to the end of Caesar's CN unit analysis. Overall, a very comfortable and versatile unit that we can apply to a lot of our teams. Currently best in slot with Ellen. In the future, if we get more and more on-field DPS that doesn't want to get interrupted, then Caesar is going to be arriving at a very good position. If we get more burst DPS like Zhu Yuan, then it might not be that crazy compared to an on-field DPS. So it really kind of depends on the environment and units that we are going to be getting in the future. Well, the day is just going to be right? Join Discord, join YouTube, join Twitch. All the best for your gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.